and made a world-class looking sports car that represents America and represents exotic cars and represents custom things. I wanted a mix of all of those.
The clang of metal echoes in a Salt Lake City shop. Sparks fly as welders trace bright arcs across raw steel. A sketchbook lies open on a workbench, its pages filled with flowing lines, impossible curves, and wild reimaginings of cars that once rolled off assembly lines half a century ago. And in the middle of it all, one man's name is stamped across every detail: Dave Kindig. But here's the question: what really happened to him? Is the calm, composed leader you see on bitchin' rides the same man who faced grueling pressure behind the cameras? Did sudden fame bring fortune without struggle, or did the glare of television lights fracture a family business that had been built on trust? And as the years tick by, is Dave still at the center of Kindig Customs, steering the empire, or has the spotlight quietly shifted elsewhere? 3 questions, 3 mysteries, and one man whose story cuts deeper than television edits will ever reveal. Stick around, because by the end of this documentary, you'll know the full story of what really happened to Dave Kindig from Kindig Customs, and where his legacy stands as of 2025. Let's dive in. For viewers, Bitchin' Rides feels straightforward. Each episode opens with a client bringing in a dream: a tired muscle car, a forgotten truck, a classic European import that's begging to be reborn. Dave listens, sketches a rendering that looks like something from a dreamscape, and the team transforms it into reality. To the audience, Dave is steady, calm, the kind of leader who never raises his voice, who sees design not as chaos but as control. His partner, KevDog, balances him with humor, a foil who breaks tension in the shop while reminding fans that even perfection requires laughter. Together with a crew of painters, welders, and machinists, the show projects an image of order. The builds come out flawless. Candy-deep paint glistens like water. Panels fit so seamlessly that even factory engineers would take notes. Every episode ends with a smiling client, a roaring engine, and the clear message: Kindig Customs always delivers. But what the cameras capture in 45 polished minutes is only the surface. The reality behind those doors is a workshop that operates like a living organism. Dozens of employees, thousands of moving parts, sleepless nights, missed family moments, and always the ticking clock of deadlines that television cameras quietly cut away from. The truth is, Kindig Customs is less a show than a balancing act, and its story starts long before television ever came calling. Dave Kindig didn't grow up surrounded by Ferraris or private garages stacked with hot rods. He was raised in Salt Lake City, Utah, a city better known for mountains than metal. But from a young age, he saw lines differently. Where other kids doodled superheroes, Dave sketched cars. Not just any cars, but the kind that seemed to move even when locked on paper. His influences weren't professors or automotive engineers. They were hot rod magazines, car shows, and the occasional gleaming classic parked on a neighborhood street. Each contour became a study, each chrome detail a masterclass. Dave carried a pencil everywhere, teaching himself through repetition how shapes could be refined, improved, reimagined. Unlike many future designers, he didn't attend an elite school. His training was real life. He worked in graphic design, honing an eye for proportion and branding. It wasn't cars yet, but it was about selling an idea, about understanding how color and form could influence emotions. Those years would prove invaluable later, when clients needed not just builds, but visions. By the time Dave was in his 20s, cars had become his obsession again. Swap meets, small shows, late nights in garages borrowed from friends, anywhere he could get his hands on metal, his name began to circle in local circles. That Kindig guy? He doesn't just fix cars, he makes them better than new. Salt Lake wasn't Detroit. It wasn't Los Angeles. But that didn't matter. Dave was about to take a leap that would test everything he had learned. Before Kindig Customs was a global name, it was just Dave and his wife, Charity, dreaming of something larger. In 1999, they opened Kindig It Design. The shop wasn't filled with million-dollar contracts or TV cameras. It was a gamble, small, precarious, and personal. Every project mattered. A single mistake could sink them. Dave poured himself into the details, often working late into the night, sketching designs, sanding panels, and double-checking every measurement. Charity handled the business side, ensuring bills were paid and clients kept faith. Together, they made survival possible. The early builds set a tone. Dave didn't just restore cars to factory condition, he reinvented them. He tucked bumpers, shaved handles, and blended old bones with futuristic touches. The results were seamless, clean, fresh, and different from the loud, aggressive customs dominating other garages. Word spread. Kindig's reputation grew. Slowly, the couple's dream began to stabilize. Yet even as their shop gained traction, Dave never chased celebrity. He was a craftsman first. Fame, if it came at all, would come much later. But every craftsman has a break. And Dave's was just around the corner. The year was 2014. The automotive TV boom was in full swing. Fast and Loud dominated Discovery-style networks. Overhaulin' had turned Chip Foose into a household name. Las Vegas shops like Counting Cars were pulling in audiences hungry for grease, drama, and chrome. And into that mix came a quieter, steadier presence. Dave Kindig. It wasn't overnight. Producers had been watching the custom car scene for years, looking for the next voice who could carry a show. Dave didn't fit the stereotype. He wasn't a fast-talking hustler or a wild-eyed builder with a temper. He was calm, collected, the kind of craftsman who drew confidence not from volume but from precision. Velocity, then a young network carving out space for automotive storytelling, took a gamble. They greenlit Bitchin' Rides. The title itself was risky, designed to catch attention in a crowded lineup. But the heart of the series would be Dave's designs and the Salt Lake City crew tasked with pulling them off. The pilot was electric. From the moment Dave sketched a Corvette concept on screen, audiences were hooked. Viewers weren't just watching cars get restored, they were watching imagination become reality.
So we have power coming in by the 7-Eleven to the west side of the building. My main billing address is the other end of the building.
When the first season debuted in late 2014, it quietly set records for the network. By the second season, Bitchin' Rides wasn't just another show, it was the flagship. Dave's calm voice, Kevdog's humor, and the shop's obsessive craftsmanship gave the show a rhythm that stood apart from the chaos of its rivals. And suddenly, the world knew the name Kindig. At the height of the show's rise, the builds themselves became legends. Fans still recall the Copper Caddy, a 1960 Cadillac that shimmered with a bronze glow so deep it looked like liquid fire under lights. That single build alone made the shop a pilgrimage site for enthusiasts across the country. But it wasn't just one car. Dave and his team produced Corvettes that looked factory fresh yet futuristic. Volkswagens reimagined with elegance rather than kitsch. Trucks so seamless they could roll into a showroom tomorrow and still feel decades ahead. The formula on screen was clear, but the secret ingredient was chemistry. Dave, with his calm leadership. Kevdog, always ready with a wisecrack to cut the tension. The crew, painters like Charlie, fabricators with steady hands and relentless drive. The interplay wasn't scripted drama, it was rhythm. Each personality clicked in ways audiences felt genuine. By season 3, Bitchin' Rides wasn't just a series, it was a global export. Airing in over 100 countries, translated into multiple languages, Dave's sketches became a universal language of design. Fans in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East shipped cars across oceans just to have them reborn under Kindig's roof. Industry recognition followed. Awards at SEMA. Magazine covers, a loyal fan base that filled social media feeds with praise. The Kindig brand expanded into merchandise, apparel, and licensing deals. The once precarious shop had become a juggernaut, but with every rise comes new challenges. Fame magnifies everything, the applause, the criticism, and the cracks. Here's where it gets complicated. While the show's edited arcs made everything look seamless, the reality of custom car building is anything but. A single project can take months, sometimes years, of labor. And with television schedules to satisfy, the pressure multiplied. By the late 2010s, fans online noticed gaps between episodes and reality. Cars featured on screen weren't always delivered as quickly as edits suggested. Some clients reportedly grew restless over long timelines. Others understood that what they were receiving was not just a car, but a piece of art that required time. Lawsuits occasionally surfaced, as they do in any high-dollar custom shop. Contract disputes, delivery disagreements. According to filings, most were routine matters in the business world, but because of Dave's fame, even small issues became amplified in headlines. Fans also began asking the inevitable question, how much of the show was real? Reality TV, by design, compresses time. Weeks of sanding or welding vanish in montages. Tensions are smoothed over. Social media comments speculated about scripting, about whether builds were sped up for TV or staged for effect. Dave rarely addressed such chatter directly. His focus remained steady. Let the cars speak for themselves. Then came 2020. The pandemic disrupted supply chains and froze travel. For a global brand like Kindig Customs, it was a double-edged sword. On one hand, production slowed. On the other, fans stuck at home devoured episodes, binge-watching entire seasons. Demand for merchandise rose, viewership spiked. But behind the shop doors, the same struggles every small business faced. Delays, health precautions, scheduling chaos, forced adaptation. By late 2021, the crew was back in rhythm. But something had shifted. Episodes leaned more heavily into storytelling, into highlighting the personalities and bonds within the shop. Dave's leadership became more visible, his calm demeanor framed as the glue holding the operation together. And through it all, the pressure on Dave never lifted. Leading a shop was one thing. Leading a shop that was also a television set, a global brand, and a family business was something else entirely. So the question lingered. Could Kindig Customs remain both a functioning garage and a television spectacle without breaking under its own weight? The answer would come in the years that followed. When the lights of reality television shine too brightly, many shops crumble. Some fade into obscurity, others fracture under lawsuits or interpersonal chaos. But Kindig Customs, the shop tucked into Salt Lake City, proved resilient. Still, resilience comes with scars. By the early 2020s, the empire Dave and Charity Kindig had built no longer looked like the small, precarious shop of 1999. It was a polished machine with dozens of employees, contracts across continents, and deadlines tied not only to clients but also to networks and advertisers. Expansion brought new layers. The company wasn't just bending metal. It was managing licensing deals, merchandise lines, sponsorships, and appearances at global trade shows. Every car built on screen doubled as marketing. Every rendering doubled as brand identity. Dave was no longer only a craftsman. He had become a CEO, and with that shift came new pressure. How do you keep the art alive when the business becomes this big? The pandemic exposed fault lines. With supply chains frozen, sourcing parts became a nightmare. Paint, sheet metal, custom wheels, everything slowed. Television deadlines had to flex, and yet, episodes still needed to be delivered. The crew had to work around not just the demands of design, but also the limitations of a world in crisis. Reports suggested the shop staggered schedules, dividing teams into shifts to protect health while keeping projects moving. Clients were asked for patience. Fans, meanwhile, binge-watched back seasons, posting online about their favorite builds, speculating when new episodes would return. By late 2021, the cameras were rolling again, and the builds roared back to life. But if you looked closely, the tone of the series had evolved. It wasn't just about cars anymore. It was about people. Episodes leaned into the personalities of the team, the bond between Dave and KevDog, the mentorship of younger fabricators, the pride of the painters. Viewers weren't just watching sheet metal bend, they were watching resilience take form. And resilience defined Dave's leadership: calm, deliberate, steady. He never positioned himself as a television star. He remained, first and foremost, a designer. That balance between art and fame, craft and commerce, was the tightrope he continued to walk. As of 2025, Dave Kindig is not a man in retreat. He is very much alive, active, and still in charge of the empire that bears his name. The shop in Salt Lake City hums with activity, builds stacked months, even years in advance. Dave's wife, Charity, continues as the operational backbone. For over 2 decades, she has managed the financial and logistical side, ensuring the shop not only survives but thrives. This isn't just Dave's story, it's a family story. Their children have stepped into roles within the company, strengthening the idea that Kindig Customs is more than a workplace, it's a legacy being passed to the next generation. Television remains central. Bitchin' Rides has crossed 10 seasons, making it one of Motor Trend's longest-running staples. It still attracts global audiences, still drives tourists and clients to Salt Lake City, and still proves that custom car television has room for artistry alongside entertainment. Outside the show, Dave has become a fixture at automotive events. At SEMA in Las Vegas, his builds attract swarms of fans and industry insiders alike. Each new car unveiled isn't just a product of his shop, it's a cultural event. Whether it's a reimagined 60s Corvette or a truck reborn as a futuristic cruiser, the anticipation remains electric. Social media paints a picture of a man still energized by the work. Posts show him unveiling cars at events, sketching designs with that familiar pen and paper confidence, and thanking fans for their loyalty. There is no sense of withdrawal or burnout. Instead, there is continuation. A craftsman still at the peak of his creative energy. And perhaps most impressively, Dave has managed to avoid the controversies that plague so many reality TV stars. No scandals, no public feuds. His name remains synonymous with professionalism, design, and calm leadership. Yet for all the present-day strength, the true measure of Dave's impact lies in what he has built beyond the moment. A legacy can't be measured only in dollars. Still, the numbers tell part of the story. Industry insiders suggest that Kindig Customs now operates at a multi-million-dollar scale. Individual builds are rumored to start well into 6 figures, with full frame-off restorations and custom creations climbing dramatically higher. These aren't casual garage jobs, they are investments, rolling art pieces that clients wait years to secure. The television show itself has become Motor Trend's crown jewel. Syndicated in over 100 countries, it has introduced Dave's designs to audiences who may never set foot in Utah but still recognize a Kindig build on sight. Fans in Europe and Asia have shipped vehicles thousands of miles to his shop, underscoring the global reach of the brand. Awards and accolades follow consistently. His builds win at SEMA. Magazines feature his projects. Industry insiders speak of him as not just a talented builder, but as one of the most disciplined and innovative designers working today. But perhaps the most telling number is longevity. Reality TV is fickle. Shows peak, collapse, and vanish. Yet Bitchin' Rides continues more than a decade on with ratings strong enough to guarantee renewals. In a saturated market, that endurance is rare. Fans don't just tune in for the cars. They tune in for Dave's calm presence, KevDog's levity, and the sense of trust that the team delivers. It isn't chaos, it's craft. That distinction has kept viewers loyal and has kept the Kindig brand untarnished. And beyond the awards, beyond the ratings, the deeper legacy is community. Kindig Customs has inspired countless young builders to pick up tools, to sketch their own visions, to believe that craft can survive in a fast, disposable world. Dave's story shows that patience, design, and discipline can carry further than shortcuts ever will. So, what really happened to Dave Kindig? He turned a dream into a dynasty. But the story doesn't end there. Because legacy isn't about what you've built. It's about why it matters. When you strip away the layers of television edits, the sheen of candy paint, and the roar of V8 engines echoing across car shows, you're left with a story that isn't really about cars at all. It's about a man, his family, and the values that sustain them through fame, pressure, and unrelenting deadlines. And that's why the story of Dave Kindig matters. In the entertainment world, countless stars rise quickly only to fade just as fast. Viral fame burns bright, then fizzles. But Dave Kindig's journey is different. It is built not on spectacle, but on something slower, steadier, and more enduring: craft. Every rendering he puts on paper speaks to a lifetime of discipline. Every decision he makes in the shop reflects a balance between imagination and feasibility. And every time he walks in front of the camera, he resists the temptation to perform as a caricature. He simply stays himself, calm, precise, and quietly ambitious. There's a lesson here for anyone watching, whether or not they care about hot rods. Fame doesn't have to corrupt. Success doesn't have to demand arrogance. Television doesn't have to destroy authenticity. If guarded carefully, those platforms can amplify what's already there. In Dave's case, what was already there was talent, family, and a vision of design as art. Think about the odds. A kid from Salt Lake City, without a design degree or backing from Detroit's giants, created one of the world's most respected custom shops. He launched a television show that has lasted longer than many scripted dramas. He turned local reputation into international recognition. How many people in his position would have buckled under the pressure? How many would have allowed lawsuits, deadlines, or internet speculation to drag them down? Yet Dave stands unshaken. The story also matters because it reminds us of the power of family. From the beginning, Charity was not just a supportive spouse. She was a co-founder. She kept the books balanced, the schedules running, and the doors open. Their children, growing up in the orbit of the shop, chose to join in, making the business a generational story. Viewers don't just see a shop, they see a family working in harmony, carrying one name forward together. And for car culture itself, Dave's presence signals something vital. Customization doesn't have to be about ego. It doesn't have to scream. It can whisper, refine, and perfect. His builds show restraint in a world that often rewards excess. That's why so many fans point to Kindig Customs as a standard, not just a spectacle. So, what really happened to Dave Kindig? He proved that integrity could survive in the harshest of spotlights. In the end, this isn't just a story about bitchin' rides. It isn't just about chrome and paint, about sketches turned into steel, or about engines roaring down the Salt Lake streets. It's about the endurance of values: craft, family, community. Dave Kindig's journey teaches us that success is not about shortcuts. It's about patience, discipline, and the refusal to compromise on vision. It's about leading a team without shouting, about guiding a family without losing yourself, and about building an empire without sacrificing authenticity. What really happened to Dave Kindig? He kept going. Through long nights in the early shop, through the sudden glare of television fame, through global challenges, he kept designing, kept building, kept leading. He is still here, alive, active, and crafting cars that leave crowds speechless. And maybe that's the greatest revelation. The story you thought you knew, the TV edits, the polished episodes, wasn't hiding scandal or collapse. It was hiding just how difficult it is to sustain something so pure for so long. The real twist is not tragedy, but endurance. So, as you close this chapter, ask yourself, what's your favorite Kindig build? Was it the copper caddy, glowing like molten bronze? Was it the sleek Corvettes that looked like they had slipped through time? Or was it the humble trucks that became futuristic masterpieces under his team's hands? Tell me in the comments. Because every fan has their own moment when a Kindig build stopped them in their tracks. And if you've learned something new about Dave's journey today, stick around. There are more stories of resilience, craft, and legacy to uncover. More legends behind the lights. More answers hiding in plain sight. Like, share, and subscribe, because this channel is where the myths meet the truths, where fame meets humanity, and where the spotlight reveals not just stars, but the substance that makes them last. Stay tuned, because the story of Dave Kindig is still being written.